Le soir.
Hi, and welcome in this video. We are going to talk about the vocal singer toolbox, which will help you mix quickly your vocals. This combinator will make this sound to sound like this.
Ma vie sans histoire. Quand je suis
Do you like how that sounds? Let's see how it's done. Alright, so in this video we are going to talk about the vocal singer toolbox. So that's one of the main 4 first combinators I've published, and it's one I've been using since I done it, basically. And before that I was using a version with some rack extension and VSTs, and I found this one with the stock plugins works actually better in some ways. Okay, so as you can see, there's multiple functions that are clearly labeled with some square, darker square on the background. The first stage will be the volume and compression stage, which is super important for vocal. Next, it is the DSR part. When you see a new icon on the function, it doesn't necessarily mean that the function is new on the combinator, but it means that the function has been updated. Next, we have the backing vocal module, which is a module to make your backing vocal life more easy, if that's something that is correct to say. Basically, you have 2 main ways to do backings or doublings. You can record them twice to have a nice stereo effect, or you can use a Haas effect, which is quicker, so you don't have to do 2 tracks, but just 1. And it is not as nice, but it works, and there is nothing wrong about using the Haas effect. Next, we have the reverb function. So if you don't like this reverb module, you can use your own reverb after the combinator, of course. And we have the forward knob with a limiter and the bypass button. We'll talk all about that in the video. Okay, so I have a nice track here, and it is not mixed. So the vocals are dry. There's only an EQ on each track, so not on each track, but on the main bus, actually. Also, there's an EQ on the third backing, but doesn't really matter now. What I'm going to do is play you the song, so you hear the vocal dry as it is.
Le soir, tu regardes les étoiles. Le jour, elles sont dans ton regard. Tu amènes l'éclat dans ma vie sans histoire. Quand je suis dans tes bras, j'oublie le temps qui passe. Tu as changé mon regard depuis que je vois les étoiles.
Alright, so as you have heard, there is a quiet part and a louder part here, and that kind of jumps at you when it comes here, because the volume is not in check. So there is a lot of dynamics, and for this track I don't want to have dynamics. In general, I don't want to have a lot of dynamics with the vocal, and when I'm talking about dynamics, I really talk about the consistency of the volume. So let's insert the vocal singer toolbox on the main vocal, and I'm also going to add a Pro C2. We are not going to use the Pro C2 for its compressing abilities, but for his watching abilities. We are going to monitor on the graph here the volume to see what it does. Let's play the vocal.
Quand je suis dans tes bras, j'oublie le temps qui passe.
As you can see, the vocal is all over the place in terms of volume. So I'm going to push the auto leveling function to 100% and compensate the volume increase with the main fader. I'm going to eyeball it around here. Let's press play, and here also seeing the difference on the graph.
Quand je suis dans tes bras, j'oublie le temps qui passe.
Isn't it nice? It already sounds good. So we have the less compression knob if we want to recover the dynamics of the track.
Quand je suis dans tes bras.
But as you can note, the volume will still be all over the place, but just much louder. But it's here. If you found the compression to be too much, you can reduce it here, but still keeping the leveling function that is under. Next, we have an output gain, and this is only a utility knob that you can automate to push the volume even further if you need. You will want to automate this button instead of the main fader. The main fader is always nice to have free of any automation, so you can mix your song more easily. Next, we have a de-esser, and really quickly, it's a 2-band de-esser. There's a clarity knob that is controlling the crossover point between the low and the high band. Only the high band is being compressed. So let's quickly tune the de-esser by pressing the listen button, and let's listen the track. So what I'm looking here is a frequency that really bring forward the S's, so they are loud, and the de-esser will be triggered by the S's. As you can see, every S's that you can hear, you are also seeing them on the graph, and they are crossing the 0 dB line, which means that they're probably triggering the de-esser. So the de-esser is good here. Let's push the de-esser up and hear the effect.
Le soir.
The first S, as you can see here, the first S is here. And when I push the de-esser up,
le soir.
It's now being dealt with. All right.
Le soir.
Next, on the de-esser part, we have a function that is present, so you have a clue of when the de-esser is activated, if ever you need it. And that is the detection button. You press this button, and now every S's and everything that the de-esser will be triggered by will be cut off entirely.
Le soir.
It is quite clear. The S just went poof. So now you know what's triggering the de-esser, and a good thing to do is to hear your entire vocal with this function enabled and move the threshold point, which is the point that the sound needs to go above to trigger the de-esser. The more you go to 100%, the less sound will be needed to trigger the de-esser, right? So let's hear with 100% threshold what it is doing with the detection enabled. So we are probably going to have a lot of cuts even in the words.
Le soir, tu regardes les étoiles.
So that's clearly too much of a threshold. So I'm going to dial it back.
Tu amènes leur éclat dans ma vie sans histoire.
When you're happy with what you're hearing, you can disable the detection button and go onward. Next, we have the backing vocal function. So now I can remove the Pro C2. Let's talk about the backing vocal using a backing track. I'm going to insert the combinator on the backing track and bring the auto leveling function to the maximum as we did. I like to bring the de-esser to the maximum for backings because sometimes the words don't line correctly, and that will be a bit odd to hear. And so by removing entirely the S's and all the sibilants that marks the beginning on or certain letters in the words, by removing them, you don't have as much of that effect, and you don't have to take the time to correctly align each word, which you can do, but for this song and for the purpose of this video, I'm not going to do. So I'm bringing that to the maximum, and I'm going to enable the backing vocal function while I'm playing the backing track. So let's play the backing track in solo.
Le soir, tu regardes les étoiles. Le jour, elles sont dans ton regard.
Let's enable the backing vocal.
Tu amènes leur éclat.
Let's disable.
Dans
Enable.
ma vie sans histoire.
So as you can hear, the vocal has been pushed to the side, and that's because there's an ASS effect on it. You can modify the width of the ASS effect with this knob, and you can smooth the backing, smoothing. It's basically an EQ for reducing the highs, and try to also recenter the image, because sometimes with the ASS effect, you have the illusion that the vocal is coming from one side or the other, and by reducing and boosting frequency in the correct ears, you can make the image a little bit more centered, but it will still be wide. Next, we have the reverb. So there's two reverb. There's a room reverb and a normal reverb. The room reverb will help you blend the track into the mix. So let's hear the effect. I'm going to disable the backing, and let's just hear the main vocal first.
Le soir, tu regardes les étoiles.
Let's enable the room.
Le jour, elles sont dans ton
So
regard.
the volume is a bit hot, but it's for the demonstration. If I were going to mix this track to my taste, I'm probably going to have the volume about here.
Dans ma vie sans histoire.
Let's disable the room.
Quand je suis dans tes bras.
Let's enable.
Joue.
So it's really subtle, but it helps with the mix. I'd say I prefer to have the room on this vocal. Sometimes it is not the case. Next, we have the normal reverb, verb on. So let's enable the reverb, and let's put the ducking to 0%. Don't touch the length for now, and let's hear an example on the main vocal.
Le soir, tu regardes les étoiles.
So there's two types of reverbs. Off is type 1 and on is type 2. Let's hear type 1.
Le soir, tu regardes les étoiles.
Let's hear type 2.
Le soir, tu regardes les étoiles.
So type 2 is much more subtle, and type 1 is much more roomy. Let's talk about the ducking function. So ducking will duck the reverb, which means that the reverb will be lowered in volume when the vocal is heard. So it doesn't clutter up the vocal with a lot of reverb, like we've been hearing just now. So let's hear the vocal, and I'm going to bring ducking up. And as I'm going to do that, you're going to hear the vocal really being cleaner and cleaner.
Le soir, tu regardes les étoiles. Le jour, elles sont dans ton regard.
So as you can hear, it's now much more clean, and the goal is to find a sweet spot between enough reverb, so we hear it if we want to, and enough clarity. So let's bring the mix.
Le soir, tu regardes les étoiles. Le jour, elles sont dans ton regard.
I'm going to increase the length of the reverb.
Tu amènes leur éclat dans ma vie sans histoire. Quand je suis dans tes bras.
All right. I think we are good with the reverb. Now let's talk about the forward knob. So forward, it's a saturation function to make the vocal even more sparkly, if I'd say. And let's hear what it does, and let's bring another part of the song, a part that will need this forward knob.
Désormais, quand je m'ennuie,
Let's bring the forward.
je regarde le ciel et je pense à toi. Je me rappelle de Noël avec.
I'm just going to quickly
Mais quand je m'ennuie.
All right, so we can automate this function. So we have like a bit of forward during some part of the song and maximum forward during the chorus, and only on the main vocal. So the backing vocal will have a bit of forward, I think, but not as much as the main vocal. So it's a really clear difference between the two. So let's bring the forward up. All right. Did I put two little dots here? Yes. And for the rest of the song, like middle point, probably. Let's hear it. Let's bring the backing as we are. Because the backing vocal is too much louder, but it's quite nice for now because I'm going to set up the reverb. Let's bring a room reverb. Okay, and let's now dial down the volume. Alright, let's quickly put Combinator on the third track, which is just here. It's a little melody between the vocal and the break. Alright, let's put the auto leveling function up. De-essing, I don't think we need any de-essing. And a reverb. Let's hear it. Maybe type 2 will be good here. Oh, sorry, type 1. Type 1 kind of works with this part. All right, so we have our vocal basically mixed, and I'm just going to add a compressor on the vocal bus, so we have even more greater control over the volume with the vocal. So it's really low ratio. The threshold as well is really low to catch only the peaks, and it's on fast mode, so it reacts really quickly. Let's hear it with the second part here. Désormais quand je m'ennuie, la nuit je regarde le ciel et je pense à toi. Je me rappelle de Noël avec les lumières des rues et le ciel en vue. Sur de mes souvenirs les plus lointains, je me souviens. Tu m'as changé. Le scintillement au loin me semble être le tien, un parfait d'étoiles. While we are at it, I'm going to make an automation on the backing vocal function for this part here. So the first one will be in mono, and the second one will be in stereo. This is one of the nice things you can do with this combinator. Really quickly have a good versatility with one combinator. Alright, I think it is good for this video. I'm going to see you in the next one. Bye!